we have a special guest with us right now. So we're going to talk about all the stuff that's happening with the whistleblower and Donald Trump and the Ukraine and Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. And we're not even going to talk about the creepy stuff about Hunter Biden. Not even going to bring it up. So we're just going to talk about the corruption stuff. We have our special guest with us. He is a friend of the show. He's a columnist for reader-supported news, and he co-hosts the show Loud and Clear on Sputnik Radio. He was also a CIA operations officer until he blew the whistle on the CIA for its use of waterboarding. Please welcome back to the show, John Kiriakou. Hey, John, how are you?
Hey, doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So now, John, you're a whistleblower, so that means the press protected you, and a lot of people in Congress stood up for you, and they let you remain anonymous?
Right. See, I did it differently because I couldn't blow the whistle on the CIA's torture program through proper channels because my proper channels created the torture program. And I couldn't go even around my proper channels to the oversight committees because the oversight committees funded the torture program and then covered it up. So I elected to go to the media, which resulted in the entire weight of the U.S. government falling on my head. But that's okay. It was an experience that in the end was worth it.
So wait a minute, you were a whistleblower and you ended up being prosecuted by the same government that you were blowing the whistle on?
Yeah, and the funny thing about that, Jimmy, is that I was investigated initially by the Bush administration because I had blown the whistle during the George W. Bush administration, and then in December of 2008, the Bush Justice Department decided, whatever you want to say, that I had not committed a crime. And they sent my lawyers something called a declination letter, declining to prosecute me. 4 weeks later, when Barack Obama became president and John Brennan became the Deputy National Security Counsel, John being an old nemesis of mine from the CIA, John asked the Justice Department to secretly reopen the case against me. And so for the next 3 years, I had no idea that my phones were tapped, that my emails were being intercepted, and that I had 3 different groups of FBI agents surveilling me 24 hours a day. Finally, in January of 2012, I was arrested by the FBI and charged with 5 felonies, including 3 counts of espionage coming out of my whistleblowing. In the end, of course, I hadn't committed espionage. That's a tactic that they use to try to coerce you into pleading guilty. And they were successful. Once I went bankrupt, they dropped all the espionage charges, and I took a plea to a lesser charge. But I ended up going to prison for 23 months.
Wow. That's what's because you see a lot of people saying stuff about Edward Snowden or Chelsea Manning or they didn't go through the proper channels, and of course you just elucidate why going through the proper channels is often not an open track for you to do that because those channels are the very people you're blowing the whistle on.
And actually, if I could add to that, because that's a very important point, and I really want people to understand this. I have a friend, Tom Drake, who's a major whistleblower at NSA. So Tom Drake stumbled in the immediate aftermath of the 9/11 attacks. Tom Drake stumbled on information showing that NSA was targeting American citizens. This blanket surveillance, warrantless wiretapping, interception of emails and phone calls of American citizens, clearly illegal. So he went through the chain of command. He went first to his boss and was told to mind his own business. Then he went to the inspector general, just like this new CIA whistleblower did. The inspector general didn't know what the heck he was talking about because he wasn't read into the compartment. Then he went to the general counsel, was told to just beg off. Then he went to the Pentagon inspector general because NSA is a DOD agency. The Pentagon inspector general actually destroyed the evidence that Tom brought out with him. So then Tom went to the Oversight Committee, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, and he ended up getting 9 felony charges, including 7 counts of espionage for doing exactly as he was taught to do, to go through the chain of command. So the chain of command's a joke. The chain of command, actually, it's a bad joke. It doesn't work. You are going to lose your career, you're probably going to lose your money, and you might lose your freedom even if you go through the chain of command.
So there you go. So that's it's amazing how the whistleblower, when it comes to Trump, is a hero, but the
Yeah,
whistleblower, when it came to George Bush and Barack Obama, are the worst guys in the world. Meaning Chelsea Manning, you, and Julian Assange, and
yeah.
Edward Snowden.
And Ed Snowden, and that's the way it is, which is funny and sad at the same time, because we have a federal whistleblower law in this country, and we have a new law that's supposed to protect whistleblowers in the intelligence community, and it's a joke. If you blow the whistle on, let's say, money laundering or tax evasion or bank fraud, like Brad Birkenfeld did at UBS. Brad Birkenfeld, although he was prosecuted too, wrongly, I believe, and went to prison for 3.5 years. When he got out, he got a $104 million settlement from the Treasury Department for his whistleblowing. But if you're in national security, forget it. You're going to prison, and you're going to real prison, not some minimum security work camp.
You didn't get a settlement?
Man, I am still digging my way out of bankruptcy. It's awful.
Oh, well, listen, I'm glad you're here because we have another whistleblower inside the White House. John, this is great news. Someone's going to tell the truth, and it seems like all the politicians learned from your case because now they're protecting the whistleblower. Well, here it is. New York Times revealed that the whistleblower who blew the whistle on Trump pressuring the Ukraine government to get dirt on his political opponent, meaning Joe Biden, the whistleblower was from the CIA, and he was detailed inside the White House. So this is right from the New York Times. It says the whistleblower who revealed that President Trump sought foreign help for his reelection and that the White House sought to cover it up is a CIA officer who was detailed to work at the White House at one point, according to 3 people familiar with his identity. The man has since returned to the CIA, the people said. Little else is known about him. Now let me just stop here. Is that normal, John, for a CIA guy to be working kind of inside the White House, kind of against the people in the White House? You know what I mean? Kind of spying on them. Is that normal?
No. What is normal, though, is that there are a whole bunch of jobs at the National Security Council that are reserved for CIA analysts. So if you're a really great analyst and you get up to the GS-14 or GS-15 level, your reward, rather than to be transferred somewhere else around the building, your reward is to go down to the White House for a year. And if you're really good, you can extend that for a second year. And then when you go back to CIA headquarters, you get promoted. So everybody wants to do a 1 or 2 year rotation at the White House. This tells me that this guy is legit, that he was a top analyst, that he was rewarded for his analysis by being sent to the White House for a year or two. He saw something that scared the daylights out of him, and then he went back to the CIA. Now, one of the interesting things that I noticed in this New York Times piece was his understanding and familiarity with the so-called transcript of this call. First of all, that was not a transcript. That was what's called a memcon, a memorandum of conversation, or a telcon, memtelcon, memorandum of a telephone conversation. Those are generally not circulated to the analysts at the CIA. They are internal NSC documents. And so it tells me that he was probably still at the NSC when he read the document, and only very recently went back to the CIA and then reported what he had learned through CIA channels. So I think this guy's probably a top analyst.
So, you don't think that the CIA, I mean, what is the view of this show and us here, as far as Russiagate goes, is that was drummed up by the, mostly the intelligence community to mess with Trump. And
Agreed.
So this let me give you the rest of and then I'll come back to you because, so the man has returned to the CIA. The people said little else is known about this guy. And I love what my friend Caitlin Johnson said this. She says, so there you have it. A mysterious stranger from the lying, torturing, propagandizing, drug trafficking, assassinating, coup staging, warmongering, psychopathic CIA was working in the White House, heroically provided the political media class with politically powerful information out of the goodness of his heart, and then vanished off into the Langley sunset. Clearly, there's nothing suspicious about this at all. She goes on to say, in all seriousness, even to call this spook a whistleblower is ridiculous on its face. You don't get to call someone from the U.S. intelligence community a whistleblower unless they're actually whistleblowing on the U.S. intelligence community. That's not a thing unless you did it like you did, John. She says the CIA liberally leaks information wherever it's convenient for CIA agendas while withholding all other information behind a veil of government secrecy. A CIA officer who exposes information about CIA wrongdoings without the CIA's permission is a whistleblower, which is what John Kiriakou is. A CIA officer who exposes information about someone else is just a spook doing spook things. You can recognize the latter by the way the mass media supports and applauds and employs them, like they're now paid consultants, the former head of the CIA for MSNBC and CNN, and you can recognize the real deal whistleblowers by the way they have been persecuted, imprisoned, and or died under mysterious circumstances. And that would be also you. So do you have any, how do you, because that's the way I look at it. My bullshit detector goes off when they say it's a whistleblower who works for the CIA after they just got done blowing their Russiagate scam that they tried to pull on Trump. And this goes back to what, go ahead. I'll go back to, so go ahead. I just want to get your response.
So I couldn't agree with Caitlin Johnstone anymore. I think she's absolutely right. I'll tell you what I'd like to ask this whistleblower is, Ukraine aside, I want to know about the drone program. I want to know if there's still a torture program that's been reconstituted. I want to know about secret renditions. I want to know about secret prisons. Do we still have them? If so, where are they? We don't know any of that stuff. So I have to agree with Caitlin Johnstone. This guy wants the best of both worlds. He wants to be seen as a whistleblower, and by God, the mainstream media has bestowed that upon him. And he wants to take down Donald Trump, and he wants to just ride off into the sunset, maybe get another promotion for having done what he's done. But let me add one more thing too, Jimmy. It took my attorneys, especially Jesselyn Radak, 1 year, and I mean working full time for 1 year, to get the mainstream media, specifically CNN and MSNBC, to stop calling me CIA leaker John Kiriakou and to start calling me CIA whistleblower John Kiriakou. Finally, the week before I went to prison, a year after my arrest, CNN called me a whistleblower. MSNBC called me a whistleblower with quotation marks around the word whistleblower. And then Rachel Maddow, who's supposed to be this great champion of the left, always, every time she says my name, she always says John Kiriakou, who styles himself a whistleblower.
Oh, God.
Uh-huh. And then she can't understand why I won't go on her show.
Yeah, she's the worst.
You should go on her show and say she styles herself a journalist.
Yeah, she styles herself a journalist.
You can have that, John.
So this is quite a tweet. So Caitlin then tweeted this, and I want to show everybody this because it really breaks it down. She says, take off the revolutionary's mask, and it's the CIA. That's Juan Guaido. Take off the terrorist masks, and it's the CIA. That's Al-Qaeda. We funded them. We also through Saudi Arabia. Take off the newsman's mask, and it's the CIA. Well, you know, we already showed you that on the show. Take off the filmmaker's mask, and it's the CIA. That's the white helmets. Take off the whistleblower's mask, and it's the motherfucking CIA.
Oh, I've got to find that and retweet it. That's yeah. She's absolutely right. She's absolutely right. And what kind of bizarro world do we live in where now all of a sudden, practically overnight, it's the CIA that's the good guys?
What that right? That's it's like I can't. So here I want to play this for everybody. You've seen this, and everybody who watches the show has seen it, but it bears repeating. So here is Chuck Schumer talking with the venerated Rachel, who styles herself as a journalist, Rachel Maddow, who's a propagandist of the highest order, $30,000 a day to post the bullshit she pulls. Anyway, here is Chuck Schumer. They're admitting this is what's called a gaffe. And a gaffe is when you accidentally tell the truth. And that's what he's doing here. He's actually going to let the cat out of the bag about what the CIA does if you don't go along with them, even if you're the president of the United States.
He's taking these shot, this antagonism,
Yeah.
this taunting to the
Let me
intelligence
tell
community.
you take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday of getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were
I don't know,
motivated to?
but from what I am told, they are very upset with how he has treated them and talked about them.
And so, John, to me, this is exactly what Chuck Schumer predicted. The CIA then went and messed with Donald Trump with the Steele dossier, which was completely debunked. They went and it was basically Russiagate. They got that the FISA warrant on him in such a BS manner, and then they still couldn't prove their goddamn case. They did it all under. There's so much corruption around Trump, yet they did it under the one thing he didn't do, which was collude with Russia in the 2016 election. So they failed at that, and now they're going to try to do this Ukraine thing, which is why that's what it looks like to me, which is why I wanted to bring you on. Does that what it looks like to you? This again, the CIA is messing with the president, even though he may have done something corrupt. It's still them trying to get him, right?
Absolutely, yes. You know, when Chuck Schumer gave that interview, the very next day, I was invited onto CNN to explain what his comments meant. Were they talking about November 22nd, 1963 was one of the questions. And I said, no, they're not talking about November 22nd, 1963. What they're talking about, and this is where I made a mistake, Jimmy, I underestimated them and their malice. Mm-hmm. I said, what they're talking about is they can make this president fail. They can make him fail by slow rolling him. If they don't like a president, they know that they can outweight him. Because these guys at the senior levels of the CIA have been there for 20, 30, 35 years. I knew one guy at the CIA who was in the senior intelligence service leadership for 42 years. So they know that presidents come and go, and they're always going to be there. What they do then is if the president says, oh, I want you to focus on China, they say, yeah, we're going to get right on that. And they just ignore him. Because they know that in 4 years, he's going to be gone and somebody else is going to be president. What I didn't think was that they had the guts to actively take up measures against a president. And now, I've got to agree with you, I think we've seen them do it twice. We saw them do it with Russiagate, knowing that that was bogus information, and then they continued to leak bogus information through their stooges like Ken Delanian at NBC and MSNBC to pollute the media with this nonsensical storyline. It failed when the Mueller report came out, and now I think we're seeing them do it again.
Yeah, it was a big crash and burn, especially if you watch the Mueller testimony. I mean, not watch the news media's coverage of it, but if you actually watch the Mueller testimony, it was a case of elder abuse. And it was sad. It was worse than watching Joe Biden try to tell you to keep a record player on at night.
Yeah, and can I get back to one point that you made too?
Sure.
And that was the FISA warrant against Carter Page. You know, that warrant was falsely obtained.
Yes.
And it was falsely renewed, and everybody just seems to have they've forgotten about it. There should be a Justice Department investigation on the CIA officers or whoever did it, the FBI agents who went to the FISA court and swore that the information they had was true and used that false information to get these FISA warrants on Carter Page. They owe Carter Page an apology, and somebody needs to be prosecuted for what they did.
So that brings me to my next question for you. Now, some people are speculating that that's exactly why the CIA is doing this, blowing the whistle right now at this moment, because they are launching an investigation into actually how Russiagate got started, who gave false information. You know, the guy who started this whole thing was Milsford, if that's how you pronounce his name. He started the whole thing, and it looks like he was CIA, right? And he lied to the FBI. Mueller admits in his report he lied to the FBI 3 times. They never prosecuted him, never re-interviewed him. Mm-hmm. No. So now they're going to do now it looks like they're going to do a real investigation into Russiagate, and this is to try to throw the dogs off the scent or to try to distract everybody from that investigation. What do you say to that?
Oh yeah, I think that the fix was in with Mifsud, because you remember when the shit hit the fan, they said, "Well, we can't find him. He's a very shadowy character. He might be in Malta." I had him on my show. He's teaching at a university in the UK. Just pick up the phone and call him. Shadowy character. They can't find him. I friggin' found him.
Yeah, they could. Yeah, I know. They found him. He was in Tora Bora. They let him go. Anyway, so that I think that this is what people aren't. This is what. Do you get amazed when you watch the corporate media, the MSNBC, the CNNs? I don't. Do you get amazed when you watch their coverage? ABC, the whole deal is crazy, right?
Yeah, sickened. I used to watch Morning Joe every day, not because I like Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, but because they talk more about politics than any of the other morning shows. And I just love politics. I've been a political animal all my life. Well, I can't even watch that anymore in the mornings.
No.
Now, in all honesty, I'm not saying this to be funny. I watch reruns of Adam 12 in the morning when I'm getting ready for work, because I just can't trust any of these morning shows on any of the networks.
So I live on the West Coast, so Morning Joe comes on here at like 3 a.m.
Right.
And so I used to watch it. I'm a night owl. I used to watch it right before I go to bed. You watch it when you get up. I watch it right before I go to bed because I like to go to bed angry.
That's what it is. You get Joe Scarborough sitting there with a straight face and looking right into the camera and saying, "Russia, Russia, Russia. What about Russia? Come on, man. Do you really believe people are that stupid?"
They do. And don't you remember, though, when Russia hacked into our healthcare system and denied 30 million people access? Don't you remember when they did that? Don't you remember when Russia hacked into our banking system and foreclosed on 5.1 million families and kicked them out of their houses and then gave those houses back to those same bankers to sell them back to... Don't you remember when Russia did that? Don't you remember when Russia made 80% of the workers live paycheck to paycheck? You got to get on to the news, man. I mean, it's all Russia.
See, I'm watching the wrong networks.
Yeah. Hey everybody, we're doing a live show every Sunday in October in Hollywood, California at the Sycamore Tavern. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for tickets and become a patron. We give you hours of bonus material every month. Become a premium member. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com and sign up. Thanks for your support.